talking about. Some of you may never have met an atheist, but that's me, and I'm pretty out about it. One of the things that I want to say that I think is really important is that if they can divide the groups of us, then we don't have political power. So if they can make black people hate atheists, then we might not vote together. And if they can make gay people hate black people, or not understand, right? And that, of course, is, you know, there are so many intersectional identities. So there are black gay people and there are black atheists. And so I think the most important thing is that we not be divided. And as they put more and more stress on us, as the resources are more limited, it gets harder and harder not to fight with the people who should be on your side. And so that's one of the things that I think is so important. I hope that everybody will read the book On Tyranny by Professor Timothy Snyder. And it's 20 Lessons for the 21st Century. He wrote this book in the beginning of the Trump administration and said, look, we see rising fascism and tyranny. I want to write a short book that tells people, what do you actually do? You know, it's not a giant history book that's 1,000 pages long, but in his research on authoritarianism and tyranny, he came up with these 20 very practical points. So I'll tell my story with Moms for Liberty. I have been on the Charleston County Health Advisory Committee for 5 years. Does anybody know what the Health Advisory Committee is? A few of you. Yeah, so the Health Advisory Committee actually recommends sex ed curriculum to the district. We don't have any real power. We recommend the curriculum and then the school board accepts it, typically, right? In 2020, there was a group of really brave students from School of the Arts who said, I don't like part of this state law that governs sex ed. And that law basically said you couldn't talk about alternative lifestyles except in the context of sexually transmitted infections. It was horrible, right? And so we're excluding a bunch of the kids who are in our school system. And so, and the basis for that lawsuit was on the 14th Amendment, which is the Equal Protection Clause. We think that all of our students should be protected equally, they should be educated equally. So the students sued, and instead of taking it, you know, all the way to court, the school district, or the State Department of Education, said, you know what, you're right. You got us. This is absolutely discriminatory. We're going to strike that part of the law. So the Health Advisory Committee in 2020 implemented a really beautiful, much more comprehensive sex ed curriculum. And it has to fit within the state law, which is a bit outdated, but given the state law, we do the absolute best we can, and the curriculum is really pretty amazing. So when you think about this idea of dividing people, Moms for Liberty comes in, they get this board majority, and what do? They get rid of a majority of the Health Advisory Committee members, of course including me, because I'm outspoken and an atheist. They really don't like that. I'm standing with other education activists. I'm a threat because I'm bringing people together, right? So all of us, why we're under threat is that we're bringing people together and we're letting people know what's going on. These Moms for Liberty people on the school board have no idea what they're doing. They are bumbling and they do things incorrectly. I keep saying to people, if I were going to be an evil villain, I would be really careful to do a good job at it and at least do my research. They don't do that, right? But what they do is they create chaos. It is absolute chaos. And they have done exactly one thing in a year that was good and had anything to do with students in terms of being effective. And that was to approve a raise for the teachers in Charleston County. Actually, a vote. So that was good. But in a year, and everything else they've done is to try to harm students. They try to harm the LGBTQ students. They try to harm the Black and brown students. And they it's exhausting, right? So, yeah, that's the plan. It's to exhaust us and we say, oh, I can't do anything with these people, I'm gonna go away. I'll just stay home and ignore things, right? And I see that a lot more among white people who have the privilege to ignore things. But when you're in any kind of oppressed group, you don't have the privilege to ignore what's going on politically. The thing I would say is, I sometimes want to scream with my hair on fire and say, everybody pay attention, you all are here, but where's everybody else? And, when some of us were talking about the rise of fascism a few years ago, people would roll their eyes and think we were crazy. Why are you talking about that? That's not, there's no comparison to Hitler and Germany and genocide. It doesn't start like that. It's a slippery slope. It happens really slowly. So, the beginning of the end of my story is that tonight was actually the first Health Advisory Committee meeting that I wasn't on, in 5 years. But I went to that meeting and put together a presentation that helped everybody on the committee who's new. And let me assure you, that committee is actually good. I'm not worried about that committee. It's going to be a little more contentious than it was because there are probably, one or two people who might sort of create chaos and division, but the majority are good people. The Health Advisory Committee is going to be fine. Of course, they can recommend whatever they want, and the 5 for 4 Moms for Liberty Board is going to vote it down if it's anything good, right? But the Health Advisory Committee is okay. So I gave a presentation and just got people on the same page in terms of, what are our rates of sexually transmitted infection? Do you think we're doing great in South Carolina in sexually transmitted infections? Like, are we down at the bottom of the states or are we up near the top?
Last I checked, we were like 8.
We're
worse.
Yeah, we're fourth. We're fourth. Yeah, we're fourth in the country and I think it's third if you count all the STIs, but for the most common ones, we're fourth. It's a bad situation. We're not doing great on unintended pregnancies. We're not doing great on bullying and violence. So, we really need this Health Advisory Committee. And one of the things I always tell people is that sex education is a social justice issue. And so it's important for all of us to stand together and elect good people. Because again, the committee's fine, but the board is not going to pass anything that's good. So, and if you didn't watch that last meeting, it was really chaotic. The school board meeting was chaotic, but it was interesting because Rivers was in the audience, and they essentially threw him out of the meeting, after which he actually got, in a surprise move, by the brilliant Gary Calhoun, put on the Health Advisory Committee. So tonight was his first meeting, and they also, I have no idea, some of y'all probably know Dr. Thaddeus Isabel. So I have no idea if he had any idea before this meeting that he was going to be, he didn't. So without his application or knowledge or consent, he was also put on the Health Advisory Committee board, and I was very happy to see him there tonight. So they're going to be fine. The rest of us, not so much. So get out there and vote. And I will pass it over to AJ, who's going to tell you about white Christian nationalism and dominionism, right? It's all about, yeah, so come on up. It's all about white supremacy.
And Bonnie,
yeah.
I didn't know if we didn't get Thaddeus and Reverend Nelson, we wouldn't have no black people on the board at all.
Yeah.
It was going to be an all-white board.
The board was all white, and it has been for a long time.
Yeah. And that wasn't like, they had it.
It's called On Tyranny, and I think the part after the colon is 20 lessons for the 21st century by Professor Timothy Snyder. And there are two versions of it. There's one that's more like texty that was in the beginning of the Trump administration, and then there's a really beautiful graphic version of it that came out that I think is even lovelier. And so I want you to look through those lessons and really take them to heart. So I'm always thinking about the first lesson, which is don't comply in advance. Don't do what you think the people in power would want you to do. Don't do things because you're afraid. If you have the privilege to speak up, then speak up.